Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Corey, who invited me. Corey, can you just stand up? There he is. Awesome. Alexi, too, who helped me get here. Thank you, Alexi. And also Ann and Kyoki, who actually traveled with me. But thanks for inviting me to come here because I love talking to you guys. You guys are an awesome group of humans. And I'm a big skier, and you guys are into snow and skiing, too. So it's awesome to be here. My name's Doug Stoup, and I live in Lake Tahoe, California. And I have a company called Ice Axe Expeditions, and I've actually been in business for 27 years. And back 27 years ago, backcountry skiing and snowboarding really wasn't even a big thing. It was more the person that wanted to go, didn't want to pay for a lift ticket, and they wanted to just get in the backcountry and get some fresh POW and do that. But it's turned out I was really lucky because I started this company traveling the world, taking skiers places. And it turned out to be like one of these things where people really love adventure. And it's more people that have a little bit more money, and also they want a athletic pursuit, and they also want to like ski remote places around the world. But my favorite place is Antarctica to go skiing. I've been to Antarctica 69 times. I think 49 on the peninsula, and that's where it's magic because you're skiing down the wildlife, and there's nothing like it in the world. About, excuse me, about 3 weeks ago, I was at the South Pole. I had a journey that had to cross what's called a last degree, and we ski for 7 to 10 days across the polar plateau and get to the South Pole. And just remarkable trip. It was my 20th time to do that. And, certainly my hands and my toes are still numb from it. So hopefully my fat finger that's numb won't pass through the slideshow too quickly. This is a great quote that I always loved. And, it's just an amazing quote that I really, I think I read it maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And it really sort of sums up what I love doing. And only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far you can go. And I thought that was a great thing by T.S. Eliot. Here's me at the South Pole. Probably I've done 20 trips to the South Pole, and including 4 crossings of the Antarctic continent from the coast. And I've done the Hercules Inlet route, which is about 787 miles. I've done another route that was Shackleton's intended route. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And then I did a speed crossing with a young kid, which I'm going to talk about, and that was about 500 miles. And then I did one with the handicap guy, and I'll talk about that one too. So 4 crossings of the Antarctic continent. But this is what I love doing. I really love skiing. When I get back from these Antarctic trips where you're skiing on the flats for days and days, you really miss the mountains. And and Antarctica is a place that's not really the place to go ski the steeps, because as a guide, you climb up there, you can boot pack straight up to the steepest stuff. And then the guide usually goes first, and he'll rip all the snow off. And then the clients are standing on top on bulletproof ice that they have to descend. And this is an amazing picture by my friend Kyoki, who's actually in the audience here. Go ahead and put your hand up, Coke. And he's a madman. He's running around the mountain with about a 55-pound pack, trying to capture everything. And it's just been lucky enough to have him as a photographer for the last 25 years, and documenting all kinds of trips that Ice Axe goes on and I go on. So I've been bringing him along in a lot of different places. And you got any paddle boarders? Okay, I'm into paddleboarding, or I got into paddleboarding, and did the first paddleboarding in Antarctica. And about, I think, 2015, I went around Lake Tahoe in a single push, which is about 77 miles. I think it took me 16 hours. And then I did Cuba to Key West in a single push. So as you guys get to know me, I like pushing the limits of human endurance, okay? And so, yeah, I'm a professional sufferer, for sure. That's what I love doing. But it all started in 1999, where I had a dream to go ski ski, climb, and snowboard the highest peak of Antarctica, 16,077 feet, and no one had done it before. And I had been going up to Alaska in that time frame in the early 90s and pioneering heli skiing back then. So there weren't a lot of heli skiing operations there, and it was just starting. Met a guy named Doug Coombs, and he was sort of one of my mentors. Amazing guy. I also knew a guy from here named Alex Lowe, who was another mentor of mine. You guys come on in. It's all right. Unfortunately, you have to order a beer over here, so you might have to walk through the crowd over here and order a beer if you want. But you can go sit down. Anyway, Alex was another friend of mine that mentored me and really got me into the mountains and really sort of emphasized, let's try to have more fun than everybody else. But 1999, I had the idea of going and climbing and snowboarding the highest peak in Antarctica. And you see this mountain here. This is right at the summit ridge of the Vinson Massif. And we were basically, the interior of Antarctica only gets about 12 inches of snow, so every year. And so what happens is I was stuck at Camp 2 with about a 30-centimeter storm. So this is really atypical. But I was pretty stoked because we were going to get some powder runs and powder skiing. So we end up being successful in climbing the summit. I think we got there in 2 or 3 days. It usually takes about 5 to 7 days. But we had an amazing crew: Stephen Koch, Mark Newcomb, Doug Coombs, and Wade McCoy, a photographer from Jackson. And we went up to the summit, came down, and Camp 3 is somewhere in this col between that mountain and Vinson Massif. And that's the 6th highest peak in the world, called Mount Shin. And so we had no problem climbing Vinson. So we ran over there and climbed Mount Shin and snowboarded it and skied it. And the mountain behind that is Mount Tyree, and that's the 2nd highest peak in Antarctica. And I named my son after that mountain. My son is now 24 years old, and I'd love to go back with him. And no one has skied the Northwest Couloir on that mountain, and I'd like to go ski it with him someday. So, but we had a great time on this trip. Amazing athletes. We skied off the summit. Some clouds started rolling in, but you could see that there was some really nice powder. This is me snowboarding down. I was a snowboarder back then. And this is prior to split boards. I tried to make a split board and it just didn't work. I had all those volet, little parts, and it just didn't work very well. So I was always on my feet, crampons or little approach skis. Which about 6 months later, to be honest with you, what happened was I came back from that trip and I really fell in love with Antarctica. We flew in from Punta Arenas, Chile. We landed on an ice runway, amazing experience, and got off the runway, and we walked maybe 300 meters and got into this tent city. And it was 3 in the morning, 24 hours of sun. At 3 in the morning, there was a chef there cooking crepes and strawberries. And I was like, where the hell are we? And just had an amazing trip with a great group of friends and truly a remarkable experience. And I wanted to see more of Antarctica. So 2 months later, I chartered a Russian research vessel and went down to the Antarctic Peninsula and pioneered skiing down on the peninsula for 3 weeks. And 6 months later, a guy I met in my first trip in Antarctica was one of the polar guides, and he was a Russian guy. And he called me up and said, hey, do you want to do this trip where you can ski from Hercules Inlet, 787 miles, and cross Antarctica? And I was like, yes, I want to do that. So didn't really know too much how to do that. So I tried to call some people and try to ascertain as much information as I could to figure out how I was going to ski across Antarctica, because you start at sea level and you climb 9,000 feet up to the polar plateau. And then when you're up on the polar plateau, it's sort of like undulates a little bit and gets you all the way to the South Pole. But quite a journey. These things are all done sort of unsupported. So you have to plan all your food, all the things you need. You cut the toothbrush in half. You're cutting labels out of clothing. It's really a remarkable thing to try to put together and try to do, because it's all about planning and preparation. So I wanted to go do this trip, and but the guy that asked me to do it didn't really tell me too much about the clients. And so he then tells me that the one guy that I'm taking is going to be blind and his sight guide is deaf. So it's like the short bus pulled up and like dropped off 2 people and said, okay, you need to guide these guys across. And this is Miles Hilton Barber. He's the blind guy. And then his sight guide, John Cook, on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry. So we had an amazing time. I mean, we were a little bit slow. This was a fairly long trip. It was 62 days to cross. So basically you're wearing the same underwear. Every 7 days, you'd sort of turn your underwear inside out. And then it would get a little crusty, and then you turn it around again. So it was just one of those things where, you only took the exact things that you needed. You had to calculate the food, the amount of fuel that you needed just to do something like this. And I think we had 60 days of food, and then we had to go an extra, sort of ration for 2 days before we got to the pole. This is one of the turn of the century explorers named Ernest Shackleton. Anybody read the book Endurance? If you haven't, you have to read it. Get it a book on tape, whatever. Alfred Lansing is the author. It's the most heroic story even to this day. What happened was Shackleton, first of all, anyway, this is the ad that he wrote in the London Times. He said, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor recognition in case of success. So that was the ad that he put in the paper, and he got all kinds of people that wanted to do that. But anyway, the story, I'll tell it in about 2 minutes. The circumference of Antarctica expands 500 miles every winter. And so he came down and was going to try to winter over. What happened is the boat got surrounded by ice, got crushed, started moving out to sea. He dropped off most of his men, 22 men, on the very tip of the Antarctic Peninsula called Elephant Island, dropped them off. Then he put one of those rowboats that basically the boat got crushed. So one of the rowboats on the main boat called Endurance, retrofitted it a little bit, sailed that 800 miles to the island of South Georgia. That was where they were at maybe 6 or 7 months earlier. They crossed the island, which was not easy. They didn't have any tents or food. So they crossed the island, get to a whaling station, and they weren't even recognizable. Then they sailed 1,700 miles back to Punta Arenas, Chile, and had to write a letter to the Queen of England. Took 6 months for that letter to get there, 6 months for the money to get back. He bought a ship to go down there, and the boat got crushed off of Cape Horn. So he went back to Chile, back to Punta Arenas, and begged the Chilean Coast Guard for a boat that really wasn't even suitable to go to the Antarctic, called the Yelcho. And he sailed that down and rescued every one of those men. They lived on penguin and seal for 22 months. Amazing story. So I'm telling you the story because I wanted to do the journey that he intended to do of 1914 through 1960. It was called the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. And so he was going to winter over and then cross the whole continent of Antarctica. And I wasn't going to go by boat. I was going to go by an Aleutian aircraft, and it landed on an ice runway. And then I took a ski-equipped aircraft to my drop-off point in the Filchner Ice Shelf and started the journey. And it was crazy because no one had ever done this journey before, and there was crevasses everywhere. And I'm talking everywhere for the first 9 days, because as I told you, you're starting at sea level and you're climbing 9,000 feet. And this is called the Recovery Glacier. I fell into 4 different crevasses up to my chest. And so we didn't rope up or anything. I would unrope from my sled. I would just ski ahead and probe, and try to find the right path for 100 meters or so, and then return and grab my sled and said, come on, to my client. I said, just follow my footsteps. Don't get out of the ski tracks. And this is a picture of us. And that's not mountains behind us. That's actually crevasses. You can, if you look closely, you can actually see the ski tracks coming around. And I think I put my camera on a timer on a tripod and then just ran and got in the, put my traces on and then got the picture. But just crossing a lot of crevasses. Here's one that I fell into up to my chest. A lot of them were over 500 feet deep. I just told my friend, I said, if I fall in one of these crevasses, don't even come and get me. You have the sat phone. just start working your way back and call and get picked up where we got dropped off. So because there was no way of rescue. I mean, all the crevasses were so deep. And we had a lot of whiteout conditions. And if you look closely, you can actually see that I have a flag on my pole. And that's how I navigate. I would navigate by pulling my compass out and like really paying attention on where the wind was coming from, because I don't want to make any unnecessary steps. And if the sun is out, it's amazing navigation, because I know at 2:22 in the afternoon, my shadow is right here and south is directly in front of me. At 4:15, I know that south, my shadow is right in front of me and south is right in front of me. So you're almost like a little sundial as your shadow comes around during the day. It's pretty crazy. And, you know, even you get the hang of it right away, and it's just sort of like that's how you navigate when the sun is out. But when it's not, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But I was actually more accurate in the low light conditions than I was in the sun, because I was so anal about it. I was like, I don't want to like mess up. So, and I would know that by just my GPS. And here's me just pulling out the compass, making sure I'm going the right direction. And I had a satellite phone, and that's like a little Palm Pilot back then. I think this was in 2007 and 2008. I started the journey in November and finished in January. So it was right around then. And I have tape on my nose, and that tape is there really for preventative maintenance. It's really because I'd be sweating and my goggles would freeze to my face. And then I'd try to pull my goggles off and it would rip skin all on my nose and my cheeks. So I just put tape there. And I have the Palm Pilot. I'm updating my probably my MySpace account back then, maybe Tinder or whatever. Anyway, it didn't work real well, but that's how I communicated with the outside world. And so I consider myself an adventurer, a polar adventurer, not a polar explorer, because those guys were the real deal. They didn't have technology. They had a plane. I had a plane come and pick me up. Those guys would have to get to the pole and actually find their way back. So it's really, I have a lot of respect for the turn of the century guys that were true explorers. And they're, you know, reindeer parkas and didn't have any of this stuff. They were really suffering. So amazing what they did. Even somebody that has tons of experience on the ice, I still made mistakes. And this one, what happened is I was 3 days away from the South Pole, and I ended up, let me just move over here because I think I'm getting a little back feed. You hearing it okay? Anyway, so I had taken my goggles off because I really couldn't, they got all frosted and I couldn't navigate. So I put them on my forehead. I started skiing for about 4 or 5 hours, and I got to our destination. We were only a couple days away from the pole. After 2 or 3 days, you can almost see the pole, but it doesn't really make any sense because there's all kinds of weird buildings and there's nothing you can really have reference to. Nothing looks like anything. It just looks like big buildings and a couple big satellite domes and stuff like that. So I can actually see the pole, but I ended up getting what's called snow blindness, and it's quite painful. Every time that you sort of blink or shut your eyes, it's like sandpaper running across your retina. And it took about 7 or 8 days for me to heal from that, you know, and I wore goggles all the time. And to add insult to injury, about 2 days before this injury, I was chewing on a piece of chocolate and I broke one of my molars in half. So I had to pull that out with my Leatherman. So, and it was actually in two. So actually 2 pulls. It was like one was so, and by that time we were out of drugs and we were out of liquor. So I had nothing. And so it was like a dry, you know, surgery, and quite painful at the time. So I think that was the most pain I've ever been in, is really pulling my molar out twice. Well, because it was, and I could actually hear my jawbone break when I was pulling it out. Anyway, I get to the pole and I had some gauze where my tooth was. You know, it took 47 days, 737 miles to get to the geographic South Pole. And there's a scepter there, which I have my hand on. And you can see that's the new base. That's the scientific base that the National Science Foundation has put up. And we can't go in. even though I'm the first American to ski to the South Pole, I'm still not allowed to go in. So I'd have to stay in a tent, and I walked around a little bit, and they would have a guy, like, not in suit, he had his big down jacket, but he was one of the executives at the pole, and he would follow me around. He says, "You need to go back to your tent." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "I just skied across Antarctica. I don't have to go anywhere. You don't, just because you decide to put the base at the pole, you're telling me I have to go back to my tent." I'm like, "No." Anyway, it was sort of silly, but that costs $443 million of our taxpayer money to build that base. And they are doing some really cool science there. And if I had more time, I could tell you some of the science work that they're doing. But you guys might have heard of the South Beach diet. This is the South Pole diet. Before I left, I weighed about 217 pounds. I was eating whole chicken carcasses, and I would eat like Ben & Jerry's, like 3 or 4 things. And I'm just trying to gain weight, but also I was trying to train. So I was trying to, like, not only gain weight, but also be ready too and be fit. And so 217 pounds. And then when I got there, the trip took 47 days to get there, 737 miles. I weighed 174 pounds. So I lost about a pound a day. And I had one less tooth. I had to shave my head. My eyes were killing me because it was like snow blindness. So it was sort of crazy to be able to get there. And you never take your shirt off, so you don't really know what you look like, And I took my shirt off. I was like, "Who is that guy?" I mean, really crazy how that happens. But in this last trip, I lost about 10 pounds, and even after you get there, you still sort of almost don't want it to end. You're such a civilized way of life every day of just trying to get your miles in, and you just end up like I would eat like 3 meals, even if I didn't even pull a sled all day, because we're pulling sleds for probably about 12 to 14 hours a day. And we were sleeping maybe 8 hours a day. So anyway, it was an amazing trip. And I could tell you a little bit more about that trip because the guy I went with was Richard Dunwoody, and he was a jockey in England. And it was the weirdest thing. It was 47 days. I never had a conversation with him. And we'd stop every hour and a half, and it would be so windy and so burly that I would be shoving nuts in my mouth, and you couldn't really talk because you're like, trying to eat and drink, and within 5 minutes your hands were freezing. So you're like, let's go. And so we never talked during the day. And then, like, at the end of the day, I would say, "Oh, let's do another hour," and he'd say, yeah. And so I'd start skiing, and I'd look back maybe 15 or 20 minutes later, and he'd be on the ground. So I'd set up the tent, I'd start cooking, start boiling water. He'd come in and fall asleep. "Wake up, you got to eat your food." He'd eat and then fall asleep with his food in his bowl. So 47 days, didn't really have an intelligent conversation, which is bizarre. But anyway, that was that trip, and certainly fun. And then this gentleman, his name is Parker Leoto. He was 14 when he first contacted me, and we did a last degree to the geographic North Pole. And a last degree is 60 nautical miles. So our planet is longitude and latitude axes. Obviously, equator is at the equator. North Pole's 90 degrees. South Pole's 90 degrees. And so he wanted to do the last degree of latitude to the North Pole. And the North Pole is all sea ice. It's unique because basically South Pole's at 9,300 feet. So you're up on a big dome with an effective altitude of 12,000. So North Pole's all sea ice. And I did this trip with them, and we got to about 2 miles away from the North Pole, and it's all lake. And I'm like, shit, what are we going to do? I mean, the sleds are designed, you can go across maybe 20 meters to cross an open water lead, but we can't go 2 miles to the pole. So we ended up just waiting there for about 10 days. And after we got there, and I had another trip right after. So I ended up just saying, hey, I can't do it. We'll come back next year. So the next year he came back. We were successful that year. He was 15 years old. And then he contacted me, said, I want to do a big trip to the South Pole. And at 18 years old, we decided to go down to the Ross Sea, which is completely different than the 2 trips that I had done prior. And we were going to do a trip from the Ross Sea all the way to the South Pole, which from the coast was about 500 miles. So this is all permanent sea ice. The miles trip was basically from almost where it says departure all the way to the South Pole. The Shackleton Traverse with Richard Dunwoody was sort of where those two lakes are. Those are islands. And from there all the way to the South Pole. So this was a completely different part of Antarctica. And you could see the permanent sea ice is that grayish color. This is permanent sea ice too. So you see this race start. We were going to drive a 6x6 Arctic truck vehicle all the way across Antarctica, which was really boring. Anyway, we get down and we drive it all the way, and we're doing some science work too. I do a lot of mentorships, and we wanted to do some climate change stuff. So we get down to the bottom of basically the Filchner ice shelf, and I'm sorry, the Leverett Glacier, and that's where we started the journey, which is considered the coast. And the previous record was about 24 days, and we wanted to do 500 miles in 24 days. We wanted to try to do it faster. And so we drove across with all our gear. It looks pretty cool, but it was boring. You know, it's a lot of the same stuff. And we did every degree. We were doing these core samples, which were really cool. We were doing isotope readings. We were collecting ice and snow, and had to put on plastic like hazmat suits and stuff like that. It was sort of cool. But we had some really low temperatures. I mean low temperatures meaning warm temperatures. I wasn't even wearing a jacket, and so almost 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So I wasn't wearing a jacket. This is sweat that's freezing on my shirt as I'm skiing to the pole. And saw really a bunch of moon dogs or sun dogs and all kinds of really cool stuff on our way to the pole. But we end up doing that trip in 18 days, 4 hours and 43 minutes. And this is the scepter that year at the pole. Every January 1, they realign because the actual ice is moving about 30 feet every year. So if you look at these bamboo poles with the flags, I can go back to about, this was 2015. So I can go back to the year 2000, 15 poles away, and see where I was when I first got to the South Pole. Sort of interesting. And that's all just the ice moving. It's not the pole moving. And so there's a flag there. There's a sign there as well. And Parker and I get there, and it was a really amazing trip with him to be able to do that, and really a good kid. 2 years later, this is a trip that Keoki was on, and actually this is probably a Keoki photo. A friend of mine, Grant Corrigan, was in the Sonora Mountains of California and was snowmobiling and tried to do a big gap jump, which means you're taking off in the snowmobile and then you land on the transition on the other side, but he overshot it. And so he's like 150 feet in the air and lands flat. Broke his back. The doctor said he would never walk again. And he was married about 2 months before this trip, before that snowmobile accident. And he said, hey, and he's trying to recover, trying to get 120% recovery from this thing. So he's working out 9 hours a day. But we had to design a sit ski for him to be able to push that last degree, okay, across the ice to the geographic South Pole. Truly amazing trip. People ask me, what are your proudest moments? It's really the trips that are really, Parker, Grant pushing himself. It was Miles, who's blind, trying to cross the polar plateau to try to get to the South Pole. Those are the ones that really stick out in my mind because this is amazing. These people are doing these amazing feats, and it's more about raising money for charity and trying to bring awareness for the causes that they have. But this was, we had a lot of whiteout conditions. This is me just pull up front, and you can see Grant just puffing. It was just unbelievable to watch. And we had a film crew with us, okay? So we were making this film. My friend Tom was filming, and Keoki was shooting photographs. I got the snot sickle hanging down there and just sort of like, oh my God, when's this trip gonna get over? But we did, Grant ended up the last 100 meters. He wanted to actually get out of the sit ski and actually ski, and we would help him as you're walking through those 12 Antarctic Treaty flags, and those are the original Antarctic Treaty countries, those flags. And we get to the ceremonial pole that's just pretty much right next to the the geographic pole. And the geographic pole is where all the meridians meet. I can be in every time zone like this, just walking around. It's crazy. The South Pole base is actually working on New Zealand time. So they're working on where they came from, which was Christchurch, New Zealand. I was on Chilean time because that's where I came. Punta Arenas, Chile was my originating place where I disembarked from. So I was on Chilean time. We get to as we're walking through these flags, I'm looking at Grant. He's got goggles on and he's crying and he goes, I really wish my wife was here to see this moment. I haven't been away from my wife for more than 2 days ever before this trip, before we got married. And he's just like, I really wish my wife was there. And we secretly flew her in. So we made a movie about it. It's called The Push. You don't need to see it anymore because you know the ending. So that's Grant and Shauna, and truly amazing feat for them to do. About 2 years later, another guy called me up from Sweden, and his name was Aaron Anderson, and he goes, I want to go from the coast to the pole. And so this was pretty ballsy because he had a different type of sit ski, and we had to actually climb 9,000 feet and go 500 miles. So it took us 12 days to film that trip with Grant to go 60 nautical miles. This was 500 miles. So, and we ended up doing it in 24 days. So, and climbing 9,000 feet. So we got to the pole and we raised 2.2 million euros for childhood cancer. And so that was, I just get tickled every time I think about it, and to sit there and watch him push up the hill. I got my legs, my sled might've weighed 400 pounds or something, but who cares? I mean, that guy was like a hero to me. So anyway, love doing trips like that. I love sinking my teeth into really cool projects like that. In 2002 or 2004, I had the top 30 inventions of Time magazine, and it was a fat tire bike. So I invented the fat tire bike. I get no money or royalties from this, and now it's a huge thing. But I had a lawnmower tractor tire, and I used a wide fork, and I wanted to go to Antarctica. I'd done miles, I'd done some of these other trips, and I wanted to see how fast I could cruise across Antarctica and some of the terrain. And so I'm in a wind tunnel in San Diego doing some shoots for Time magazine. And it was pretty cool to be able to do this thing and then put that expedition together. And this is one I did solo. I really like doing stuff solo because I only have to think about myself. I don't have to worry about somebody else. I know what I'm capable of. I know how I can push it. So I love doing stuff solo. And I ended up taking the bike and carrying a shitload of weight, like tons of stuff and cameras and all stuff. But I ended up getting stuck in a 5-day storm. And it was like, I had to get out of the tent every couple hours just to dig myself out so I didn't get buried alive. And then after 5 days, the wind dissipated, and I ended up doing about 300 miles around this heritage range and making a little movie about it. But it was cool. It was awesome to be able to go and do this trip. And ended up, now I run fat tire bike trips. So if you want to go on a fat tire bike, we do about 120 miles from there to the South Pole. You don't have to pull a sled. You basically get in the snowcat carries all our camping gear. And we do have some panel levers that we put on the side with the down jacket and a thermos and some food. But if anybody wants to go, it's only about 90 grand to go. But now I run these trips down here, and I'm the only one in the world taking skiers to Antarctica. Okay, skiers and snowboarders. And this is a ship that holds about 170 people. And it's all skiers and snowboarders. Isn't that cool? It's like amazing. We have 37 mountain guides from all over the world and about 135 clients, okay? And we're on this amazing ship that has, hot tubs in the back and saunas and guys in tuxes serving chicken, fish, vegetarian, and prime rib if you want, And this is a picture of the ship, and we're cruising through the Lemaire Channel, which is like Kodak Alley. It's just really beautiful with these spires coming out on either side, really narrow, really cool place. And there's all the guides. We just have a blast. And, safety is our number one concern. We don't have a lot of avalanches down there. They get about 7 meters of snow a year, but a lot of wind. And so you're worried more about crevasses. Crevasses is our main concern. So we rope up going uphill. And it's so beautiful. It's one of the most pristine places. The mountains come right out of the water. The ice when we're down there is just really spectacular. But the biggest thing that I love is just skiing down to the wildlife. And you're skiing down to penguins. These are gentoos. And you take these little zodiacs to get to shore. And with my experience of being down there for 47 times, I know where to put people, where the landing zones are. We spread everybody out. It's actually really cool. You feel like you have Antarctica to yourself. And we just start hiking up, you know, and we'll get to a place where we have to rope up because some of the ramps, if you look at the topography, all you see is ice walls everywhere. And then you'll find a couple ramps and you need to have good skiing above the ramp. So that's where the experience comes in. And then we just go skiing. And this was one of my first trips down there when I chartered the Russian research vessel, and I was a snowboarder then. And this is that one picture with the ship on it was through Lemaire Channel, which is right around the corner here. And I did the first ascent of this one mountain called Mount Scott, and this is the Northwest Ridge. That drops over 1,800 feet right to the water, right here to this right. And did the first ascent of that. And, you know, we were snowboarding and just having a blast. And it was like, we were having a time of our lives, you know, just because we were out there and nobody was around. If we would have fell over, no one would even know we were there. Just amazing, these channels of snow. And you could see the topography like I'm talking. It's all ice walls everywhere. You know, you can't even get up on any of that stuff. So this was a run we called Sex Troll. I don't know why. But this is the Ice Princess. I mean, there was some good sporty stuff. We went sort of later in the season. And so a lot of the time you were really waiting for the sun to really warm up some of the slopes. So you had a good edge to do, and you're always carrying your ice axe, you know, just for self-arrest reasons. And this would be more typical this time of year. That's a mountain in the background called Mount Francais. It's over 9,000 feet. And another Utahian, I guess you call him Utahian, from Utah, from Park City, named Andrew McLean. Him and I got dropped off at the base of that mountain and tried to climb it for 3 weeks. And we got about 100 meters from the summit, but we never saw it until the day we left. So I love this picture because you can actually see it. 9,000 feet. It's never been skied or snowboarded, but that main ridge is the middle one, and that's called Bull Ridge, and that would be the one to climb and ski. And we got pretty close to the top, but never really got there. And just the mountains come right out of the water. It's really spectacular. Here's me taking my team. Oh, we have Ann on this trip. So Ann, raise your hand. So Ann's in the back here. I'm leading the group of skiers up this one face, and Ann's in the back, making sure everybody's safe. I've always put the most experienced person in the back. So, and we're just having fun and having some really good powder that day. You can see how the snow quality looks pretty good. And another picture, like the views are just spectacular. And what's really remarkable, you can even get up to a ridge and you look down and you'll see 7 whales breaching, and you'll hear them, you know, blowing and stuff like that. So it's really just outer worldly. But it's skiing down to the wildlife is really what I love. And there's nothing like it. And I can guarantee skiing down to the wildlife. And if you look closely, there's my group of 4 there on the face. So there's all kinds of great terrain that we go and ski. But this is what you really look for, is that lower angle terrain. That's where the good powder is, you know. So just being able to ski down and find these really good ramps. This is a little bit steeper. This is pretty close to the water and with the ship in the background. This is a guy named Chris Davenport skiing some steeper couloirs. This is the same couloir just further down. But what I love about this place is look at the rocks. You have these weird towers of like spines of rock that are just like nowhere else in the world. It's just really cool. This is a guy named Seth Westcott. He was a snowboarder that won some Olympic medals, and he came on the trip, and looks like if he missed a turn, he's in the water kind of thing. So here's me. That's what we mostly are skiing. We're looking for lower angle slopes that really go down and have some really good powder runs. We were doing some speed flying. Just beautiful, quick way to get down. And just beautiful sunsets. We had 16-hour days. Really amazing to be able to be down there this time of year. And we even found really cool things like this was a crevasse that had been closed in 30-foot walls, and you could walk 150 feet all the way through it. And so you could see our tracks here, but we went back the next year and it got closed up. So I'm always looking for really cool things down there, and it's really just truly exploration. And I had a nonprofit called the Ice Axe Foundation, and we would do live feeds to classrooms in the States. And so I had a BGAN satellite communicator. I've actually done the first live broadcast on Facebook. I've done the first Snapchat live story from Antarctica with the Swedish guy, Aaron Anderson. But I can set up a BGAN and we could do a live feed to 1,000 kids in a classroom. And of course, this Adelie penguin jumps on the camera, and like the kids are screaming and yelling, and just a really cool experience. And we can interact, and they can ask us questions live. And unfortunately, COVID put a little bit of damper on that. We're unable to really, I had to let everybody go, and it just took a lot of money and effort to bring back the foundation. But I would love to do it someday, because it's a really cool program, and there's curriculum, and kids were learning all kinds of cool stuff. And we would do stuff even up in Alaska. We were doing Arctic Wildlife Refuge, where we'd stay for 3 weeks in an Inuit village, and we would then come back and go see our House of Representative in Washington, D.C. and say, we want to save this place. So really cool. And the chin straps, most of the penguins down there will give birth to 2 eggs, but they only usually incubate 1. So I thought this was an interesting picture. I think it's probably the male or female goes and collects krill. Okay, they're swimming in the water and they collect the krill. Krill are like little tiny shrimp, and then they'll come back and regurgitate the krill. So this was just babysitting, I think, and then the mom or dad is probably out, and this one was just watching the 2, because I don't think she was. I don't think they're brother and sister. I think they're just like another one because they look like different sizes. But chin strap penguins. That's a Kyoki picture, I think, too. Yeah, there's a Kyoki picture. The Adelie penguins. This is a chick. It takes about 9 or 10 weeks for them to lose all their feathers before they can go in the water and hunt for themselves. Just they're everywhere. And that's just really amazing to be able to interact with that. And we're on skis and have fun. Gen 2 penguin. And you can see the chick is the one with all the feathers and trying to get more krill from the mom or dad. And they regurgitate the krill. And you can see the barbs on the inside of the mouth. It's really cool how that's how they catch the krill. The krill are in big swarms, and they swim through and grab them with their mouth, and then they spit the water out, and the krill gets stuck in the barbs. And there are a lot of penguin highways. These are some Gen 2s. This is a cormorant or a blue-eyed shag. We have these in the States. Weddell seal, leopard seal. These will actually eat penguins. And just 2 seasons ago, I was standing on shore and all the penguins were jumping in, and all of a sudden the leopard seal comes up and grabs one and shook it so vigorously that the whole carcass of the penguin ripped off, and I got like penguin juice on my pants. It was like, I was just like, oh my God, that was just like nature going on right in front of me, and it was like really gross, but it was also like, wow. But you could see these leopard seals, they got all kinds of like divots in them, and they're like, they've been fighting penguins, like trying to save their lives. Another leopard seal. There's one right next to, like really inquisitive, right next to the Zodiac. I think that was with my my GoPro. Another one under the water. And then they got the elephant seals. I'm not really too keen on their dating habits. They have about 30 girlfriends, and what they'll do is another male will actually come ashore and they'll fight. And then whoever wins the fight, they go off to sea, and the new winner, the new bull, will retain the harem. So pretty interesting. You see this guy's a little bit beat up from a couple battles, but they sleep a lot, and they have to like service all those ladies too. But anyway, these are humpback whales. Tons of whale life when we're out there in the Zodiacs. A lot of killer whales. There's 3 different types of killer whales, and I watched this group of whales actually work together, and there was basically a seal on one of the icebergs, and they worked together and they would try to get it off, and then one would jump up on the iceberg and pushed it down, and then it slid, and another one grabbed it in its mouth, and it was gone. And then this guy kept coming to the Zodiac and wanted to see what I was up to. And here's a picture of Kyoki. We have these parties on the thing called the White Party. And it is the best party, but so you can see Kyoki there and his mom. And we're just having a good time. It's the best party in Antarctica. And also some amazing 5-hour sunsets, which are just spectacular. And then I also do some of these bigger yachts, work with a company called EOS, and we ski off these yachts. These yachts are this one is actually Paul Allen's old yacht called Octopus. And we have 2 helicopters on the back, and there's probably only 12 passengers and a staff of 70. It's a little bit exorbitant. And we're skiing. A lot of the days we're just doing ski touring because you can't fly, but these are some chin straps that are pretty high up off the coast. I mean, off the shore. I mean, I think took us 15 minutes to get up there, and these penguins are setting up nests up there. And here's the picture of Octopus as well. I think it's over 400 feet long. Some of the icebergs that we're seeing, just beautiful art, amazing. Here's another ship I was on called La Dacia. This one's sort of crazy. The helicopters live in a hangar below. And so if you see that lid, that's the heli deck. And so these are all on hydraulics, and they come up, and then the heli deck shuts. And these little tiny, it's sort of crazy how these helicopters are on these little things. There's a little joystick, and they can just move around. It's sort of wild. And this is below in the hangar. Crazy. And this is the one that moves around on that little thing. And they put them in position. And this is the ski room, pretty nice ski room. Here's us flying in. And in 2005, I had done the South Pole with Miles, and I really wanted to do the North Pole. I had done 2 last degrees, one in 2003 and one in 2004. But I really wanted to do a trip from the coast to the South Pole, but I didn't want to just go and beat my chest. I wanted to do something. So I went to the scientists. I said, the climate change scientists that I was interacting with, and I said, how can I help you? What can I do? I told you a little bit how I prepare for basically one of the South Pole trips. You only carry the exact things that you need. So the scientists handed me these 50-pound boxes and said, we need you to take 10 of these. And I'm the same guy that cut my toothbrush in half. So it was like, oh my God, I can't take any of these. So I looked at what the components were inside these 50-pound boxes, and they really just made them super burly because they were throwing them out of aircraft. And we were going to a place where no one has ever been to before. And so I said, I can build one of these. And so I made them about 6 pounds. And it was like a carbon fiber tubing. It had temperature, barometric pressure, and location was the key thing that they needed to know. They wanted to know where the ice was moving because it's constantly in flux and moving around. So that was the key information that we needed. And so we called it Pole Track. It was an international expedition with 2 friends of mine. You got Petter Nyquist on the left. Mark, he's from Norway. Mark Corneliusen is in the middle. He's from Holland. And then I'm on the right. And so we put this expedition together. I was sort of the brainchild within this expedition to try to put it together and ask these 2 guys. I met Mark on my South Pole trip with Miles. He was down there doing a separate expedition. And I met Petter on the North Pole when he was doing another one, doing 5 degrees. And I was doing a last degree in 2003 or 2004. And I said, hey, you want to do a trip with me? So I got these guys together. They were really seasoned and they knew what they were getting into. And so we got this together and we ended up doing this trip. And it was really cool. I was really nervous going into this trip because I had some satellite footage that the coast from Siberia to the North Pole had no ice. It was basically a 10-day-old satellite picture that had no ice there. It was all water. And I was like, oh shit, because I'm just going to go on this trip and I'm going to step on really thin ice. And it's not like if you fell through, it's not like you could swim to the shore, to an edge, an ice edge, and climb up on it. It's basically all soft everywhere. So I was a little bit nervous about the trip, but it ended up being okay. It was like really thin ice for the first 2 days. And I'll tell one quick polar bear story. But the first day, we left March 1, and they have these things up there called polar bears. And so they're coming out of hibernation right in February, like right about now, maybe another week or so, they're coming out. And right now up on the North Pole, it's probably only about 3 or 4 hours of light. So we have headlamps on. It's just brutal cold. I mean, I'm talking minus 50, trying to pull sleds across, this. And then every day we were getting 40 more minutes of light. So by March 22nd, we had 24/7 of light. And right here on this, where we are, and the ice is constantly moving. It was probably about 4 feet of ice here, but on that first 2 days, it was really, really thin. I didn't even want to take a pee because I was afraid I'd melt the ice and fall through, literally. And so I'm skiing with my friend, and I could see Mark is in front of me, and he's navigating for a couple hours, and we got headlamps on, but I could see the ice flex. And I'm like, oh, shit, that's not good. And so we end up setting up a tent after like literally 48 hours of nonstop. And I go and I'm cooking, trying to boil ice and snow to make water. And we couldn't drink the water because it had too much salt content. It was too new. And so our condensation inside the tent, I took a pot and a pot lid and I scraped the inside of the tent. And we had about a 1/4 liter of water for basically 2 days. That's all we had. Like literally share between 3 people. And so we end up pulling sleds for another half a day, and we pitch a camp, and Mark's out doing his morning business, and I'm like cooking, I'm boiling ice and snow because we were so dehydrated and so really wanting to eat too. And Petter was in the sleeping bag, almost sleeping, and I hear Mark outside the tent. He goes, grab the gun, he's gonna kill me. I unzip the tent, and from me to the camera, there's a 12-foot tall polar bear standing on its hind legs, and Mark has a shovel in his hand, trying to keep the polar bear at bay with his pants down by his ankles. And so he's screaming, grab the gun. And so I'm not the gun guy, so I grab the gun, I load the gun. Petter is in the sleeping bag. He jumps out of the sleeping bag. He didn't have any glove liners on because he was trying to sleep, and he grabbed the barrel of the gun and ripped about 10 layers of skin off his hand at minus 50. So he's screaming, Mark's screaming, I'm going, oh my God. Anyway, we shoot the gun in the air and the bear ran away. And that was like our first polar bear encounter. And I had 37 polar bear encounters on that trip. Not good. And so this is what the ice looks like. It's always moving, always in flux. These are all pressure ridges here. You might ski across here and then, I can't get across, or we'll just swim across. Some of this. That's probably a half a mile. So it's huge. This is from an airplane. We didn't have drones. And so this would be an open water lead that I would consider crossing. And I would just put a dry suit on and I'd backstroke. I'd put a big down jacket and I'd have a rope tied to my waist and I'd pull the sled across. We could put 2 sleds together and put skis across and make a pontoon and use the shovel and paddle across too. So that was another thing that we could do. This would be ice that had been frozen, open water, 7 or 8 hours ago, and I'd be able to test it, and I would know from the color of the ice whether it would support my weight or not. Just the opaqueness, I could tell. I also did this pole test, and I would hit the ice with my pole. If it went through the first time, no way I would try it. If it went through the second time, I might go. If it went through the third time, I was like, it's good. Anyway, and this is really cool. The ice wasn't completely frozen. It was still moving. So it made these little cool ripples in it. It's really wild. I mean, it's truly a beautiful place. And you have this alpenglow because the sun's never really that high on the horizon. And so it's a really colorful place. It's not white everywhere, And this is one of the beacons that I designed. And all the components were down here. And it was 3 meters in the air. So it was actually much more accurate than the ones that were thrown out of the plane that were 50 pounds. But this is at the North Pole. And there's me on the left. And look at our jackets. These are like 8,000 meter down jackets that are completely soggy and wet from just all the humidity. And that's Mark in the middle and Petter on the right. But the jackets don't even really keep you warm anymore. And we did all kinds of, there you see a little bit better. We were doing snow depth measurements, and we were skiing 14 hours a day. And the last thing you want to do is stand around doing measurements. You wanted to just get in the tent, eat, and go to bed, okay? And we spent an hour doing really accurate measurements with snow depth measurements and ice depth measurements. And it was really important for us to bring back the data that we needed to do. And we got a standing ovation in Oslo, Norway at this climate change scientific convention for all the data that we brought back. So other things that I'm proud of. This is another trip I was on. And this is the disturbed ice in the Baffin Straits. And that's Canada there. And it took me 2 weeks to get here, and I used 2 different sleds. So you could see what kind of, it's not easy. You're like crossing open water leads. Here's us just crossing one of the normal leads with one of the sleds that we had. Or we jump, or like little lily pads, we would hop from one to the other. This is me swimming, and you could see the rope. And here's me backstroking. And we would stop every hour and a half, make sure you eat and drink. If you didn't, you would bonk. You would just like, it would be a downward spiral. And this is a picture of a polar bear track. And they were real. You know, it's the only mammal that hunts man. And they could smell a seal from 8 miles away. It's, you know, I had a lot of issues with this because we don't belong there. You know, we're just visitors. They've never seen a human before. We're not in their diet. I mean, if they took one bite of you, they would probably spit you out because they need seals. They want blubber, you know. And I mean, they smell a seal from 8 miles away. They could definitely smell me. And you could see them because they would try to get downwind from us, you know, and then they would try to come in. So they were always trying to get downwind. And the covers of our sleds I designed, it's a Kevlar fabric. And you can ski across it. You saw us like climbing across it, but you can't poke a ski pole through it. You can't use your edge of your skis to be able to cut it. But it ripped it open like it was tissue paper. And it was eating my food. That was like, I think, encounter number 3. I was in the tent. Anytime the wind would blow the tent, I would like sit up and, you know, Mark and Petter were like snoring. And I would just be freaking out because I was afraid there was a polar bear. And then this time there was. And I unzipped the tent and probably closer, more like me to the camera here. And I had a flare gun and I'm like shaking my hand. I'm like, ah. And I shot him and hit him square between the eyes. And he ran away. And this is in Svalbard. This is a mom and her 2 cubs on a different trip. And these cubs are probably about 2 months old. And actually the women are smarter for sure. They'll like dig a cave for about 2.5 months, and they'll give birth to 2 to 3 cubs every 2 or 3 years. The males just do a walking slumber. They'll like lower their metabolism and sleepwalk for 2 months. And when they come out, everybody's really hungry. So they have to eat a seal like every 3 weeks. And here's the same ones, super cute. Yeah, they're really cute, but they're not going to be cute now. And this is what they eat. This is the bearded seal, and you can see the claws on them. And they have to breathe every 22 minutes, so they have to make these air holes. And that's one of the air holes. And then this is Borneo Ice Station. So I've done 17 last degree trips to the North Pole, and this is a base that's really interesting. And if I had more time, I could go into it more. But they take one of those Aleutian aircrafts with the bubble that you saw. We landed on the ice runway. They fly from Murmansk. They drop fuel on a pallet halfway. And once they get near the North Pole, they drop 2 tractors, only because a few years back, they dropped one and the parachute didn't open up and it went straight through. So they had to go back to Murmansk, get another tractor. And so they do 2 tractors and they drop a bunch of tent stuff. You know, it's like they build a tent city is what they do. And it's right near the North Pole. Then they make a runway, an ice runway. And they have to find old 4 feet consolidated old ice. And they make a runway, and we leave from Svalbard and we fly there in an Antonov aircraft to get there. And it's really pretty interesting how they do it. And it's only about 27 days they have this camp in April. So that's Borneo Ice Station. You can't see the runway, but they're starting to move a bunch of stuff around with the tractor. And this was a cool picture. A couple minutes earlier, I wish I would have seen it because they had one of the tractor operators had a life vest on in case the ice broke. It was really cool. But this thing's probably 100 years old. I mean, they have a tent, they have like a blanket over the engine. They just start it up and keep putting fuel in it. And that's how they make the runway. And this is one of my last degree trips. And it takes a lot of teamwork with this too, you know, to be able to cross these things. And you could see some of the pressure ridges. It's not easy. It's definitely a lot of hard work going up over these pressure ridges and making sure the sled doesn't come down and takes your ankle out. And it's a lot of teamwork to be able to go up over and do this. Here's me climbing up over after I pulled this one sled over. And this would be a typical camp. And I like to have them open out in the open, not around pressure ridges, so you can see the horizon and make sure there's no bears around. And I was even dabbling with trying to design a lot of sea ice. There's not a lot of sea ice up there anymore. So, use a kayak to go across. This last year, I haven't been able to go in 4 and 5 years because the Russians claim that they own the North Pole, and because the COVID and the war, we haven't been able to do any North Pole trips. So I wanted to bring a pack raft and actually drag that and try to use that with a shovel to be able to cross some of these open water leads. And when I first started doing this, the GPSs were about this big and they didn't even register 90 degrees north. And so now they reached north and you can see that it says 90 degrees. And this is one of my clients, and we just got a picture because it's constantly moving. You're like, oh, we're at the North Pole. It's going this way. So it doesn't stay, like the ice is always in flux. And one of my teams, and I do some skiing up there where we leave from in Svalbard. And this is Spitsbergen. And this place I call Valhalla. It's called the Atomfjella Mountains. And there's thousands of couloirs that are 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet. And there's hundreds of them. And I took Jeremy Jones for, I think, a hire project. And he's snowboarding a bunch. I did a Warren Miller film up there. Kyoki, have you been there with me? All right. Anyway, it's an amazing place. It's almost 80 degrees north, and one of the most remarkable places I've ever been. And amazing snow. This is me skiing down. That usually you have cold smoke. These couloirs hold about 100, 150 centimeters of like really good snow, and just really steep and just really fun. And there's reindeer there too. A lot of them will have antlers, and they'll lose their rack every 2 years. And they're almost like a good size of, I guess, a Great Dane. So about that size. And these are these bearded seals they have. So I love going places where there's wildlife. This is just a bearded seal pup. And you can see how sharp those claws are because they have to do those holes. And I also done, I think, 17 trips to the Himalaya. And here's Ama Dablam. Anybody recognize this mountain? It's like on the way to Everest. And as you're walking out of Namche Bazaar, you see it. And you're on your way to Everest and you look at this mountain, you're like, I want to go climb that thing. And basically it starts here and takes that ridge all the way up. And you can see the line on the face. That's the route that goes up it. This is Camp 2 on that route. And it drops out like 1,500 feet on both sides. So you have to really be careful if you have to take a pee in the night. And you can see our ridge all the way up. Just follow the ridge all the way. I also lead ski trips to Kashmir. Kashmir, right on the other side of that horizon line of the mountain, is Pakistan. And there's actually a lift there, or actually two-stage gondola, like they would have in Silverton, Colorado. And you could get off the first stage of the gondola, and there's actually a lift there. And there's a guy from Colorado that does all the snow safety. I bring him. I've been going there for almost 10 years, and I bring them ski patrol uniforms from Squaw Valley, old ones. I brought them all radios, and I've been training the Indian ski patrol on how to maintain and really mitigate avalanche stuff. And they're doing an amazing job. It's not really a ski resort. It is. They have one lift and the two-stage gondola, but it's really just side country, and just truly remarkable. And the town and the people are amazing. It is in Kashmir, which is India. And so you fly into Delhi and then Srinagar, and then you go up to a 2-hour drive to a place called Gulmarg. And they have a golf course there in the summer, but it's the highest gondola in the world, over 14,000 feet. And in the base, all the Indians learn how to ski. So there's like flat surface lift. There's no lifts. Well, they got surface lifts, but all those SX91s that you used to see, I think they all went there because basically these kids have huge boots and they'll just put them inside the SX91s and like learn how to ski. Pretty crazy. And like wild goggles, and just the people are so friendly and nice, and they're just trying to learn how to ski. And this is a run. I was telling you a lot of side country. You take the second stage and you go a little bit to the east and you ski 2,700 meters to this little town called Drang. And it's amazing. And you're above the clouds. That's Nanga Parbat in the background there. One of the 8,000 meter peaks, 6th highest peak in the world. And so you got amazing powder all the way down to this town. And then you go in and you have a cup of tea and sit on their floor and check out what they're doing. It's really a great cultural experience. And then you take a taxi back to Gulmarg. This is me just leading a client cross, and we just skied down, just had an amazing experience. And there's all kinds of beautiful trees. There's monkeys, Himalayan monkeys. There also is the snow leopard as well. They're very elusive. I haven't seen it. But then we go to Srinagar, and we actually are in these boat hotels, which is, I don't know, the Beatles made it popular. And you get in these little gondolas. It's pretty cool to be able to go there at the end. And I'm just adding another trip. I do these little trips to the Amazon rainforest, and we do paddle boarding, and we live on that ship. And it's really cool to be able to go there. Beautiful sunsets. We have lights, petroglyphs that are probably 1,000 years old. This is my son Tan and sloths, and I do a lot of educational stuff. I'll bring high school kids, and we'll do live feeds from there. We collect a bunch of wildlife, and we'll do a live feed to a classroom. This is me, the sloth. We do these night excursions, and all you do is put lights on the shore, and you see all you see is eyeballs. Sloth during the day. This is a water tortoise, huge water tortoise, weighs about 60 pounds. Caiman, they get up to about 20 feet long, and we just grab them right out of the water because they're like deer. If you put lights on them, they just get frozen and just grab them out of the water. And tarantulas, pink-toed tarantulas, red-faced monkeys, Capuchin monkeys. These are really weird. These are freshwater dolphins, and they're really inquisitive. When we're paddling, they come up and try to check you out. They just eat fish. The water is really cool, copper colored. This is the Rio Branco. If anybody have any freshwater aquarium, but the cardinal tetras and the discus fish were all in this river 3 weeks ago. And if you go to an aquarium shop and you see the freshwater fish, that's where they've been. So piranha too, we find places where the piranha is, and we'll catch them, and they make soup out of it. They don't have a lot of meat on them, sort of make you have good dreams. But this is what everybody goes for. It's like these peacock bass, and they're really beautiful fish, and they are really tasty, but they're really beautiful. And there's so many fish there. It's not even really fishing. You could jump in the water and catch them with your hands. And here I caught a aeropaima, and this one I gave to the village, and they ate this for like a whole week. It was about 70 pounds. And more peacock bass. My son Tan, and we would go to these villages, and they would do like these ceremonies, and shaman would be there, and they would do these dances and really traditional stuff, which was really cool. And this is me and the shaman. And I've known him for over 20 years, and I got pictures of his kids and everything. And we would we played all these women in a soccer game, and they would kick our butts. But some of the villages are more Westerner. They were traditional, and we would go there. And actually, Kyoki's been on one of these trips with me as well. And I just want to thank you guys very much for having me. Hope you guys learned a little bit. And Ice Axe is the name of the company. You can look me up on social media. I'm Iceman Doug. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, if there's any questions. But thank you guys so much. Thank Corey for really inviting me, and Brandon. You guys, I really appreciate it.
Well, Doug, I think we probably got more questions than answers out of this presentation. That was absolutely incredible. Thank you for your knowledge, your breath of adventure, your spirit of fresh air around here. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure.